by music. Stand by now.
3, 2, 1.
And fade up.
It's the Bellagio, the Mirage, and the MGM Grand.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Mike Wazowski.
Open your eyes.
Now tell me, where are the others?
Eat me!
King Kong ain't got on me!
What about second breakfast?
Why not? Why can't I? How can we be expected to teach children to learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of 20 Years, 4 Beers, or a mini-pod version of it. I have no notes in front of me, so I'm just going to kind of rant. Yeah, 20 Years, 4 Beers is a podcast dedicated to rewatching movies from 20 years ago.
Yes!
While simultaneously enjoying 4 beers. Of course, our mini-pod is more of a truncated version of this, I suppose.
Affair.
Yeah. And we actually watch these movies separately and kind of come together. So we aren't enjoying 4 beers tonight. We are, however, enjoying a beer, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But tonight, or this episode, our mini pod, we are going to cover 2001's drug-induced enjoyment of a film called Blow. And if you haven't heard of it, I would not be surprised, because I don't know how many of our listeners have watched or heard
Probably
of
not many.
this film, Blow. They might, simply because Johnny Depp is in it. So maybe at the time it came out.
True.
So for those of you who are curious about it, Blow is a film that centers around a true life character, George Young, who decides at a young age, he leaves home and decides to get involved in the drug trade, marijuana trade, and then through that gets involved with the Medellin cartel from Colombia, and then gets involved in cocaine. And that's about it's a very basic one, but it's centered. This is a George Young story. It's not necessarily about the drug cartels and how to smuggle. It's about George Young and at this time he was still in prison, and his journey through multiple marriages, lots of time in jail, and a lot of drugs smuggled over. So there you go. That's about it.
But it's fun and enjoyable and a cautionary tale, and it's
a fun little romp
insane.
through the drug-fueled 70s and 80s.
Yes, 80s, yeah.
Just a classic romp.
It's just crazy.
Directed by Ted Demme.
Yes.
I should probably give credits where credit's due, right?
Yes.
So yeah, Blow, I gave a very brief and sort of weird synopsis of it.
Who died a year after this movie came out.
I know. Ted Demme
apparently
could have really
with cocaine in his system.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
Yeah, Ted Demme really could have been a great...
Oh, he had such great talent.
Written by David McKenna and Nick Cassavetes, which...
Really?
Yeah, I was like, of the Notebook director fame.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, he was in Face Off. I forgot about that. So he's, he's 50-50.
Yep.
Starring Johnny Depp, Penelope Cruz, Franca Potente, who I really think is an underrated actress.
Yes.
Rachel Griffiths, Ray Liotta, and Paul Rubens of Pee Wee Herman fame. Oh, man. Who's actually outstanding in this movie.
Yes.
Do you want to start with reviews or Drinking Buddies?
Let's do Drinking Buddies.
Come on, not my fucking beer.
Drinking Buddies is first. So we are going to jump into our Drinking Buddies segment, where we talk about the beers that each one of us had separately. Each of us will have 2 while we drink or while we watch. So Tim, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I went first last time, so
I'll go first.
You.
So I don't love forcing a theme beer.
But I did.
Do you have one from Bad Habit?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
So I sat there thinking, well, what about it's Blow, it's cocaine? That's a bad habit to have. So I had a Bad Habit beer.
I like it.
So I had the Bad Habit Planet of the Apricot blonde ale, I think it was, or it was a wheat.
Yeah.
Very, very good, which is not to be surprised. Not surprised by it. It was still a 4 out of 5, but it was an apricot wheat beer or blonde. Great name. And then I totally went the opposite, which I appreciate, with 56 Brewing out of Minneapolis, and their raspberry sour.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Sometimes I appreciate breweries who don't have to come up with a name. There's like 56 Brewing Raspberry Sour. Like I have Planet of the Apricots and Raspberry Sour. Like it's very straightforward. You know what you get. Again, it was a 4 out of 5. It's a good sour. It's a good solid sour. So I had those two.
For me, watching this, I figured my theme was going to be, one, I looked through my fridge and I thought, what can I enjoy? But it was in the theme around illicit substances that potentially would have been illegal or deemed problematic. I had one with whiskey barrel aged in it and one with rum, in theory. So these were part of Prohibition. You know, you're following me along. Actually just really wanted to enjoy them. So it was Lift Bridge out of Stillwater here in Minnesota. They're Irish style coffee stout that comes out every year around St. Patrick's Day. 3.75. It's a solid coffee stout, but it's funny they talk about it being a barrel aged and vanilla infused beer. Good luck finding that in the flavors. It's a nice coffee stout. No whiskey barrel aged or vanilla to speak of. So I was like, thanks, but no thanks.
Well, vanilla's expensive, and they maybe reuse the barrels.
Could be.
Who knows? Lift Bridge struggles a little bit.
They're like, just go along with it. And then Brewing Project out of Eau Claire, they're deserted Pina Colada Sour. Have you had that?
No.
It's so good. 4.5. It's fantastic. No chunks, and they're sour.
Oh, that's the first.
Right?
Wow.
The other one we had was quite solid, but it's fantastic pina colada flavors. So those are the ones I had for watching Blow.
That doesn't surprise me, though. I mean, their pina colada resist was really good.
Yeah,
so,
it was very, very good.
They're good. And then what do we have now?
We have Central Waters. They're straight out of Amherst, West Coast style double IPA. I really like this one. I like it's not a hazy. It's a standard, like kind of old school. I remember having something like this out in like San Diego, Stone type of like, just kind of a lot of bitter to it. So I like it. Like probably 4.25.
I have 4 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good double. I mean, there's a little maltiness to it. I don't know, like a little sweetness to it. It's got a good flavor. It's good color.
But so much has become so hazy now that it's nice to have like a just a darker option. So yeah, that's what we got tonight.
It was good.
Cool.
So we are going to do our social network quick, and sort of the way this works is we'll kind of do 5-ish topics, kind of our high fidelity.
Top 5 side ones, track ones.
Drinking Buddies is number 1. Mm-hmm. So social network.
If you guys were the inventors of Facebook, you'd have invented Facebook.
I have one, kind of, this week.
I've got 2 in case
because you knew I wouldn't.
The
only reason I did, there were actually, I was surprised at how many bad reviews there were out there. And I was worried when I looked. I was like, man, did I misremember this movie? Because there were not that many that were better than 3 out of 4 stars, really at all.
Yes.
But I had USA Today. They just said it was consistently compelling without being truly memorable. And I was like, but I remember a lot of this movie.
Yes.
And I understand that I am who I am and the memory is there when it comes to movies.
Yes.
And I don't remember what I had for breakfast today. I understand that. But I remember a lot of this movie and a lot stood out. And I was very surprised at the social network part of this that did not have a lot of glowing reviews.
Critics it was either
some
they
really
loved
hated
it or hated it.
Yeah.
I was like, what did you watch?
That's what I have on social network. I was like, wow.
To me,
to prove I did some research.
Examples of this were Peter Travis of Rolling Stone had 5 out of 5 stars. Said smart, sexy, funny, and dangerous. This high wire act is a movie and a half.
I always like Peter Travis.
I love him. He's so effusive and then also just hate stuff.
I don't know what effusive means, but I'll agree.
Super excited and happy. And then Roger Ebert. Get this one. I actually was hesitant to put it in, but then I was like, come on, man. 2.5 out of 4 stars. And says, take away the drugs, and this is a story of a boring life in Hostel. Sorry, cut out.
No, I don't want to leave it in.
Take away the drugs, and this is a story of a boring life in wholesale. Yeah, no shit, Roger. Like, it's a movie about a drug kingpin of sorts. You take out the drugs, it's not interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a guy from New England who goes to California.
Yeah, exactly.
Woo!
And hangs out. Like, what are you talking? Like, that's your amazing critique of this movie?
Take out the crux of this movie, and it's bad.
You know, this guy from Tatooine, you take out this whole galactic empire thing, kind of boring. Yeah. No
right.
shit.
Silence and Lambs is terrible without Hannibal Lecter. Yeah.
And yet it's 2.5 out of 4 stars. So clearly, I just was like, come on, Raj. Academy Awards that year, nothing was nominated, unfortunately. Nope. But actually, not surprising. But anyway, yes, it was hilarious seeing the pretty polarized reaction to this movie.
Any first sort of thoughts that you had takeaway from?
I saw this when it came out. I went in college, and
and there was nothing to do in Northeast Iowa.
Nothing. But this is part of my shame and somewhat of being a movie fan. We talked about maybe a year or two ago. I had not ever watched Goodfellas, and so finally got around to watching it. And I say that because I had limited exposure to these kind of like glamorizing illicit world. So crime, whatever was like, maybe I had Boogie Nights. I think I'd seen Scarface, but I was like, this is so stupid. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, we're going to get to that.
This is one of the first ones I felt like completely drawn into this experience of George Young coming in, finding himself in this kind of random, like odd place, and then becoming this huge cocaine smuggler, and yet loved every moment of it. Absolutely loved this movie. It's still, I hadn't seen it in a long time, probably a good 15 years. I was worried it didn't hold up. It totally holds up as far as a gritty, interesting, fascinating take on what this could be. And you're like, oh, you had everything at your like fingertips and you just mucked it up, you idiot. So I remember loving it, and it was totally fantastic watching it. So if you haven't seen it, listeners, please watch it. It's so good. So yeah, I remember watching in college and
I had the same thing of I definitely remember watching it, and it stood out, and probably because, you know, I think when you're of our age when we were that, like in the late teens, early 20s, it sort of is this like, you haven't heard of this movie? Oh my God, it's amazing. And it almost cements it more that you like it because other people hadn't.
Yeah.
Especially sort of pre social media and that kind of stuff of just saying, you had to find this on your own and talk about it. And right, exactly.
Yep.
It's the only time in my life I would have ever been like, oh my God, you have to do Blow. It just would not have been, it just would not have worked otherwise. But it is like, I do think I had the same reaction of just, I loved finding movies like this, or a few years later, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and just some of these really unique films. And it felt at the time like you were finding an early Tarantino, like with Reservoir Dogs.
Totally.
That's how it felt at the time. Whether it's accurate or not, we don't know because he died so soon after.
Yes.
But what could have been,
yes,
that's how it felt at the time.
Yeah, so it felt fresh, different, interesting, and like, who is this?
It's a unique take on something without it being over the top. We're going to get into Scarface later, so we can come back to that. So that's kind of our first take. Do you have what's your high fidelity, like your sort of like couple of takeaways that you got? What's the first one?
Considering, again, this is from a perspective of like not connecting it at the time 20 years ago to now, again, having just more recently seen Goodfellas, considering it's essentially repackaging so many elements from that movie in terms of the rise and fall of a crime element, it makes perfect sense that they cast Ray Liotta, the lead in that film, as George Young's father. And I love that was that kind of wink to the audience as far as, hey, this is a theme we're going for, and we know you're in on the joke and the knowledge of it kind of thing. And so I didn't put it together when I first saw it, but watching it, I'm like, oh yeah,
I suppose having
Ray
not
Liotta.
seen, right, yeah,
makes
that makes
total
sense
that he's the dad. So
he's so good in this too.
And he's fantastic as this, so proud of his son, yet knowing all the awfulness that he's doing. Yes, love it.
I think Ray Liotta is perfectly cast in this. He's pretty much awesome in anything he does. And with him at the end, when George is recording like, to him, he says more by not saying anything. He's one of those actors that does a really good job of saying everything without actually having to verbalize it.
Yes.
So well done.
Yes. Yeah, that stood out to me watching. Like, oh yeah, good casting. But yeah, he's fantastic in this.
My first thing I took away really was I normally am not a huge fan of this style of narrative, which starts in the sort of like present / future, and then jumps back for narration, and then leads up to the moment you start.
I'm a prison inmate.
Right, and it's just sort of like gives away the. I'm normally not a huge fan of that
Totally.
style. Especially when a character dies at the beginning, and you're just like, okay, I just know what's going to happen here. Here we go. There are a few exceptions to that. American Beauty is one.
Yeah.
Where you do have that, but this is another exception that it works perfectly for what it is, because you need, for my money with George, you need his perspective to ground. Like, it wasn't that he grew up as a bad kid. It wasn't he grew up. He just was. Nope. It really, you needed the narrative that this was. It couldn't have been told sort of in a traditional A to B to C storyline.
Yes. You
had to do it this way. I normally am not a fan of it, but it just works for this. It absolutely works for it.
I do hate some of those movies where it's like, let's tease something that will happen at the end, keep you engaged.
That's what I'm saying.
It's like, I shouldn't have to need that.
You should be better at writing your story than have to actually tease what's going to happen at the end.
Yes.
So this is
this is the rare exception, exactly where it starts, where you realize, oh, he's going to be in prison eventually, and then, oh, let's go back in time, and show you
and how do you get there. And it's not what you would assume, and you have to take with a grain of salt the accuracy of it, but it's not what you would assume, that it was just a drug infused life that ended up in some sort of violent crime that he ends up like. It's not those things.
Yes.
So yeah.
These kind of films, when they're done well, have to really do a good job of balancing. Like, it's a real story of George Young, like making a person who ultimately did ruin countless lives.
Oh yeah, he's not a good guy.
No, he's a terrible human being.
But he's also not he's not a victim, and he's also not a bad guy.
He's appear sympathetic.
Yeah,
and I love this kind of movie where you can get drawn in to this, where I truly think this handles it well, and probably better than many that I've seen like this, where kind of it's like the idea of like anybody can, if given the chance, could accomplish these things with circumstances, right time. He has to be in jail with the connection to the Medellin cartel,
which is true.
That random, out of any place. So it's these things that life just throws these items or options in your path, and it just works out this way. And I love a movie like this where it's clearly showing that, he's a bad guy, but he's not a villain, if that makes sense. And so I love this kind of movie that has the connection with his dad and how he's so driven by that and what he wants to do to be proud or make his dad proud. So it's a high wire act for these kind of movies that have somebody that's doing heinous things, not violent, like killing. It's just like he's doing things to make money, but by the drug trafficking in the U.S. ruin people's lives, and yet he's such a sympathetic character, such a hard act to follow.
And he abhors violence. He wants nothing to do with it.
Yes.
As I was watching it, and I know Johnny Depp is in the news lately for different reasons.
Yes.
But I think back, I think there are very few actors that, when they want to, inhabit their character
totally
as good as Johnny Depp does.
Absolutely.
Like, we know that there are times where he mails it in and you watch it, or if Tim Burton calls, he just picks up the damn phone and decides to do the movie.
Yes.
And there are good examples of that. Or there are good examples of him doing well as in a Tim Burton film. But when Johnny Depp wants to be like a great actor, he is outstanding. He's great in this. He inhabits everything about George. He does it as Jack Sparrow. He does it even in Black Mass. He was really good in that. He does it in Scissorhands, and there's all kinds of examples where Depp wants to be in this role. And other times you watch him and you're like, you're just getting a paycheck here.
Yeah,
you could tell. This is one of those where if you like Johnny Depp at all, you're gonna like him in this, and he will be terrific. He is outstanding in this film.
And the thing I love about this is watching again is like, so many times someone coming from the Boston area is like, oh, the Harvard Yard,
Boston,
my car.
Yeah.
All this crap that's just like, God, you're terrible at this. Like, you're a professional actor. And yet how he, like, George Young.
Yeah.
Like, he handles it so well where it's the accent, but then how he embodies this character and goes from this, post-teen being on the beach in California through this like 50-year-old guy and handles it so well. And the physicality of it and the affect is just, he is a force in this movie. It's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Love it. Another thing for me was what stands out for me in this movie is, I mentioned before, like some like A Boogie Nights or even Goodfellas and stupid Scarface, is these in many ways, and this is not to say these are better or worse than, because I think Goodfellas is, having seen it recently, amazing, so good. Like, so good.
Yeah, it's as if people have been telling you that for the better part of 20 years.
Yes, and I finally got around to it. But what stands out for me in this movie is the connection that the whole story is driven by, like his father, and then him wanting to become a good father for his daughter, and clearly destroying that.
Yeah.
Like this whole world that he put together, and seeing that he is not living up to what he wanted to be as a father.
Yeah.
And some of the critics were crazy, reading like how they were really upset or frustrated by like the sentimentality of it. Like the first half is great and rollicking, and then it becomes like bogged down in sentimentality. Like, what did you expect? Like, it's a fascinating movie of like a real story where it's hard to, I think, encapsulate a story that connects with the audience of like, this guy ruined clearly tens of thousands of people's lives.
Yeah.
And yet that seems maybe impossible to capture. And yet you can see through this like individual connection of this girl, his own daughter, and he's clearly destroying her life.
Yeah, that's the one.
Like,
the one life that he destroys is the one. Correct.
And seriously, like watching again as a girl dad, oh my God, I'm like sobbing when I watch him. Like, oh my God, he's so... Yes, loved it. It was so good. Through that lens of the connection you have as a character with the like intimate destruction that he's causing. Yeah. Phenomenal. Yes.
I think to me this is a good example of when critics get cynical.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yep. When you walk into a movie about the drug trade, you do immediately start to compare, and you start to sort of, what other drug or gangster movies can I talk about in Reservoir Dogs or Goodfellas or Scarface or any of these sort of like these movies, and I think it's a detriment to compare. Yeah. Because my hot take, to move on,
you're American. Yes, from America.
Is that and for film buffs, this is actually some sort of opposite. I would rather watch this, and I would recommend this every day over Scarface, and it's not even close.
Yes.
I think Scarface is one of the most overrated films ever.
Yes.
And yet, people of our generation, especially in their 30s and 40s, are like, oh, I love Scarface, it's the greatest thing ever. And you're like, why? This is terrible. This is a terrible drug movie. I would rather watch this, and I would actually rather have my kid watch this as a like detriment to getting into drugs.
Yes.
And because Scarface, but it's so over the top, it wouldn't do any good. Like this is a movie that actually tells a story, tells it from George Young's perspective, and I would rather watch this than Scarface any day.
Yes.
Oh, you couldn't pay me to watch Scarface. Well, not true. I like money.
Sure.
You could pay me to watch Scarface, but it would cost a lot of money to get me to watch that movie again. I would give this any day over that. And for some reason, in movie circles, that's a hot take.
It's exactly. It's so stupid because, this movie is such a phenomenal experience watching it from Scarface is straight up garbage. It's so absurd. Like, yeah.
I find it funny. We've done some indie pods now. We've crapped on some movies.
Yes.
Yeah, we're loving on this, and yet we still find a way to crap on another movie.
Yeah, Scarface.
It's from 1987.
But my hot take was, if you were to show the trifecta of like Blow, Requiem for a Dream, and Train Spotting.
Yes.
One stop shop, 9 hours in a day of school or whatever, and be like, here's what the drug world could be like. And we are very clear, like, if you want to, like, be, like, marijuana, like, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
like,
420 friendly.
Yeah, that's it. Great. Totally cool. These 3 movies together would just be a sucker punch of, like, here's really what can happen. But yeah, I think this is a perfect movie that can connect you to a very prominent historical thing of what happened, and yet on a individual level, make you connect from a viewer. Love it. Love it, love it, love it.
God, Trainspotting's so good.
Oh, it's so good. Exactly.
Trainspotting is one of those, and we're off topic, but Trainspotting is one of those that history is going to, I think, remember as a very important film.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's great. Any final thoughts on...
I am so happy this held up. I had fond memories of it, and like you said, like, I always felt like I had to defend it in terms of watch this movie. It's so damn good. So I'm super happy it held up, and it's love it. It's fantastic. It's yeah. It doesn't get enough credit.
No, I agree. I always think if I could get a tattoo of a movie quote, there are many. Like we're talking about, like Shawshank Redemption and Get Busy Living or Get Busy Dying, and I love the quote in this. That is, life passes most people by while they're making grand plans for it.
Sure,
it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Most people end up living their life and they reach the end and they're like, what did I do?
I was making plans for it.
Yeah, I was just trying.
Yes,
and it's a throwaway line a little bit in this movie, but I love that line. I agree. I think held up. I think as parents, it has new layers to it for sure.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I couldn't recommend this movie more. I'm so disappointed that very few critics seem to enjoy it at all.
Yes.
And were very negative on it.
Yeah.
So, some of them were very negative. So
really
I really am surprised by that, but I'm glad that they're idiots and we just don't need to listen to them.
Like, can you take away the drugstore? It's not that interesting.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway,
so good.
Thanks for listening. Want to say, find us on Twitter at years_beers or on Facebook, or head to 20years4beers.com for any other information on this, or we will eventually have a YouTube channel at some point.
Someday.
So yeah, my name is Steve, and this is
Tim.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Oh my God, you have to do Blow.